So I think now is probably the perfect time to open up to some Q&A from the audience, if that's okay. So if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll try and get a microphone over to you. So if we could go...
That guy raised his hand.
Yeah, just over there. Yeah.
Hi. Hello, Tess. Yeah, someone talked about Malaysia and Sharia law. I understand you said Sharia law is dynamic. I'm from Malaysia, and in my home state of Kedah in Malaysia, if you're a Muslim and you don't go to Friday prayer 3 times in a row, you get 6 months in jail. And if you're a non-Muslim, you cannot utter the word Allah. So I understand that Sharia you mentioned is dynamic, but from my home state, it's moving toward a direction that's more draconian. So how do you mitigate that flow? And what's your thought on this kind of strict interpretation of Islam?
So you're from which state? Kedah?
Malaysia. It's a northern state called Kedah.
Yeah. Okay. Are you Malay?
No, I'm of ethnic Chinese. I'm non-Muslim in an 80% Muslim majority state.
Malaysia is it's a really, if you study Islam in like the Middle East, it's pretty simple. Okay, you study Islam in South Asia, things start getting more complicated. Study Islam in Southeast Asia, you're just like, just throw out all the books. Nothing makes sense anymore. It's a completely different, the universe of factors is totally other, right? So talking about religion in Malaysia cannot be done without talking about ethnic identity in Malaysia and distribution of resources and power in Malaysia. Right? So things like this, the use of the word Allah in Malaysia makes no sense to Muslims in other parts of the world. The Christians in the Arab world say Allah for God. And if I was, I'm Muslim, I'd be really happy if a Christian said Allah for God. I was like, hey, that's great. Like he's acknowledging, I'm not a monster, et cetera, right? So, but in Malaysia, it is so tied up with who's Malay, who has the right to the resources and the kind of affirmative action treatment that the Malay majority gets. The Chinese, the successful business group, minority, especially there's a lot of Christians, and they're brought in by the British, and et cetera, the Indians brought in by the British, and there's so many tensions there. I mean, you can't pick this apart without looking at that other stuff. So, I mean, I'm not trying to get out of answering your question. I just don't think that if you sort of say, what's wrong with the way that people understand Islam in my state, and why are the muftis affirming these rulings or affirming these practices, I don't think that gets you in here, because religious discussions in Malaysia, in my opinion, especially about Islam, are always masking bigger issues about identity, distribution of resources, and power.